Ladies, gentlemen, and exiles of all ages, with us now being a good few days past the launch of early access for Path of Exile 2, you may at this point have already found some unique items. Maybe you've only had one of these drop, maybe you haven't seen any at all and have been particularly unlucky, but no matter what, you are probably aware that they at least exist and maybe want to know a bit more about them. So today we're going to talk about uniques within Path of Exile 2, specifically the general design philosophy behind these items, and thus how players actually use them effectively, planning your builds around using uniques, and of course, how to actually get them and farm them at least somewhat efficiently as well. First things first, uniques as items in Path of Exile 2 are all meant to have a lasting impact on the way that you put together your character as a whole. They usually require some level of investment in your build as a greater concept to actually get something out of them. There is some sort of specific synergy to be involved with it, and without these, they are really unhelpful. But with it, they can become build defining. As a result, generally speaking, it is very rare to see a really good build with more than 2 uniques at any moment in time, and usually even 2 would be because they happen to synergize together in some specific way. A few examples of how these can be completely built around and how sort of useless they can be if you don't are the Threaded Light Focus, which scales spell damage with the amount of spirit that you have as a character. So if you have a lot of spirit, it enables you to get a ton of additive spell damage as well with the amount of spirit that you have. So what this mostly exists for is things like Invoker Monk, which can stack spirit, or things like Infernalist Witch, which can stack spirit, and it lets you actually get spell damage as a result of your spirit stacking. But if you don't have much spirit, it doesn't do much of anything, and if you aren't a spirit stacking character, this probably will do less good for you than just a good rare focus would. There's also the Radiant Grief Helmet. This essentially causes you to auto-ignite enemies nearby, and with this specific interaction, you can use it to auto-trigger gas grenade explosions or gas arrows into detonating immediately upon changing up the flow of the actual style of that build entirely, because you are igniting everything around you, so when you shoot the grenades out, they automatically explode. This creates a beautifully simplistic playstyle as opposed to how you would accomplish this without it, or for an example of a double unique combo, Everlasting Gaze for significant mana regeneration increases, as well as turning a percentage of your maximum mana into energy shield, and the Midnight Brand Belt, which gives you 50% of your damage taken given to you as mana. If you then combine this with the Chaos Inoculation passive, and then also the Mind Over Matter passive in the skill tree, this makes all damage be taken from your mana before your life with a mana regen penalty. So one unique cancels out the regen penalty, the other one gives you 50% of damage taken as mana, which might as well read as 50% damage reduction as a result of these two things just sort of overlapping. However, without this passive, these uniques are just sort of okay at best, and for the most part they are less useful to most builds without that passive than just having a well-rolled rare item would be in that slot. So the entire point of this that I'm trying to make is that there are good uniques, but for the most part, there aren't any uniques designed to just be slot in and profit the moment you find them because they're that good statistically without, changing anything else in your build. You won't gain power from doing this, because usually the uniques will ask you to lean into something specific as far as your playstyle or your actual building blocks of your build to have it actually be worth using and worth the slot that it's in. That said, this also means if you find a unique item that you think is interesting, just what it says it does, you can sort of just completely rework yourself around it entirely if you want to. It may not become the best build if you do that, but you might find something that you just enjoy the playstyle of that no other build matches. The uniques offer a lot of differing sort of build options or variations, but the result of that is that there are also just sort of quite niche in most cases too. A couple of interesting sort of bonus notes too is that while most crafting is not allowed on unique items, you can still do things like increase quality, add sockets, and interestingly, specifically vaal orbs do work on uniques as well as a sort of final stage, which gives you an RNG chance at rolling on a unique item that is truly unique, in that it has effects that obviously no one else's version of it does, unless they also get the exact same luck and the exact same rolls. Or you could just accidentally remove the actual unique modifier from the item because of how vaal orbs work and break the item completely. But interesting that this is something you can do and will likely actually want to do in proper endgame if you want to fish for higher quality uniques than just the base drop and you want to truly maximize that slot. Now that we've talked all about uniques as items, how to use them, when you might want to do so, and how to take advantage of them in the generally best ways, we also of course need to talk about how to actually get them in the first place. As far as farming them, to be completely clear, it's not what you would really call a farm in another ARPG simply due to how this game is designed. There is no specific area or cave that is specifically a high yield of uniques to time spent that is actually worth it, at least. There are places like the Venom Crypts in Act 3, which has a ton of chests and high chances at higher quality chests within it, which then means more item rolls and higher quality item rolls, which means decent chances at uniques, and that sounds good, right? I mean, it is the best option if you are just going to stay stagnantly at a certain level. It's a cave full of chests that can roll at higher rarities. It's great. Surely that would be a great unique farm, right? And the answer is that it is, but for a very small amount of time, really. The way that loot works within the game, especially after the recent patch, the more modifiers a rare enemy has, the higher quality loot it will drop. Bosses do a similar thing as well, where they drop more and better loot at higher levels, and so realistically the best way to farm uniques is just to get to endgame as quickly as you can and get started with the Atlas system, which will throw you into maps where your objective is killing rares and bosses, and this will be when uniques start to get much more plentiful. That said, if you already know of a specific unique, then there is one way to work your way directly into it much earlier than you may expect, which is trading. Yes, I know, trading, blah blah blah, social interaction, but literally pathofexile.com/trade2 is an officially run trade website by the developers themselves, and it lets you search for specific items, and uniques are of course options among these. Items are traded on this website mostly for exalted orbs as a main unit of currency, and it runs off of essentially supply and demand. The more sought out an item is, the higher the price will be, with a popular unique costing anywhere from like 8 up to even 60 exalted orbs I've seen items selling for at the very top end, which is quite a hefty amount of course, but lesser ones are sold as cheap as like 1 exalted orb or even less if you have some creative funky thing you want to try out that isn't overly popular. Yes, exalted orbs are important for crafting good items, but this also works both ways. If you have had a unique drop that you have no interest in, you can also sell it through this website to hopefully get some exalted orbs in return to let you get a unique that you actually want. When trading through the website, it just sends a whisper to players in-game very simply, and then everything else just happens through player interactions without much actual need for talking to people in the first place. All in all, the main point of this then was just to say don't be overly concerned or worried about uniques really if you aren't used to the Path of Exile series. They can be very powerful items, but only if you lean into them in very particular ways, and even then you rarely want more than 1 or 2 in a build due to the stats that you have to trade off by giving up a rare item in exchange. Very rarely is a unique item an instant equip item, but they have a lot of potential value as well, and while the best way to get a large quantity of unique is basically just to get to the end game as quickly as you can, there are methods like trading that you can use to get particularly specific uniques that you know that you want, and inversely you can actually get rid of any uniques you definitely don't want and gain exalted orbs in return, which have quite a lot of value at the moment. That just about does it for today then, everyone. Just a discussion about unique items in the game, when to use them, when not to, when you wouldn't necessarily want to, how to interact with them in general and work them into builds long term, how to get them, and how to make them stronger too. Hopefully this helps you out in your continued journey through Path of Exile 2, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.